Hi, Frank.
Hi, Cynthia.
We're finally getting this program started.
We are. You've spent a lot of time working on it.
Yeah. Well, I want to tell the audience why I wanted to do this show. I wanted to open up a discussion about culture and provide insights into cultural differences to promote intercultural understanding. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Cynthia Warren, and I'm the host of Looking into Cultures. And this is Frank Ficini, my co-host. And what made me get so interested in cultures? Well, I worked as an English teacher in 12 countries. And I've seen a lot of difference between my native culture and world cultures. And I've always been fascinated by difference. When I was a little girl, I was a street crossing guard at the Mystic Academy School at the corner of High Street and Academy Lane. Mm-hmm. And one day, I was 10 years old, and I was helping a little girl cross the street. And she crossed the street and looked up at me and started talking to me in German. Oh. I was so astonished that it was as strange to me as if my cat were talking to me. But it was a sense of thrill and joy. I felt such a joy at this difference, that someone who looked like me and was my age was so different. It just seemed like absolutely enchanting. Mm-hmm. And what about you?
Well, before I answer, I would like to know about your hat, because your hat's really different. I think people are probably wondering where you got this hat.
Yes, well, this is a Spanish soccer fan hat. Okay. I bought it on the streets of Madrid many years ago for $5. And it's just made out of felt, and yeah, it's a fun hat.
Now, is that a large handle it has on top, or what is the top?
It's kind of a stem. It's supposed to look like a large beret.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But what about your story of difference?
I think probably when my parents used to talk in Italian when I was growing up, because they rarely talked in Italian unless something was wrong. So oftentimes it meant someone was in trouble and they didn't want us to know what they were saying. So that's kind of, we knew there was something to pay attention to.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a thrilling experience like mine. It was more of a threat.
Sort of a threat, or just concern. You wanted to know why they were, didn't want you to know what they were saying.
Yes, and the intonation of their voice was not please.
Exactly, yeah. They were speaking sort of secretively, but, and I think you hear that a lot when people speak in a different language. Sometimes sometimes they may not think you understand it, so it's a way of kind of speaking without letting them know what you're saying. And so with my parents, that's what they were doing.
And a lot of times the intonation does reveal a lot of the meaning. Well, I have another story too. When I was 28 years old, I went out of the country for the first time. And I went to Mexico. We crossed the border from El Paso into Ciudad Juarez. Oh, wow. And we stayed in this really funky hotel. And I was sitting up in my hotel room after eating dinner and just pinching myself. I could not believe that I was in a foreign country. And to me, it was an utter thrill, because I felt like Alice who had gone through the looking glass. I was in a magical place. And I still feel that way whenever I go, when I travel internationally and live internationally. I just feel a sense of becoming other than myself, shedding my old self. And I think language does that for us too. And you said also, you told me earlier something about your cousins visiting from Italy?
Yes, they came over, and Italians are kind of known for having a lot of style, and they dress very nicely, much more stylish than I think Americans do on a regular basis. And when I was in Italy, what you were talking about otherness, I was thinking of the architecture and all the art everywhere, it was so much different than what's here in America. It's much more, there's an abundance of art.
Yes, and the otherness is just, it can be very exciting, or it can be threatening to some people too. So let us go to our first slide. We're going to talk about worldview. Slide number 1, please. Okay, worldview, here we have a couple of images, and the glasses are representing the culture.
Okay.
So when you look through these glasses, you are seeing the world through a particular culture. So culture is a way of seeing the world, and different cultures see the world differently. Now, Frank, I want you to look at these two people, and just by looking at them and from your own experiences and projecting what you know about life, what would you say, how do these two people perhaps see the world differently?
Well, a first thing that comes to mind is they're different genders, and they look like they might also be from different countries and different socioeconomic backgrounds. The woman looks like she could be fairly well off, and the man looks like he might be more of a lower class.
Okay. So far you said gender. You said what else? Socioeconomic
And
class.
the countries they're from, their heritage might be from different countries.
Different heritage. Age. You see difference
Exactly.
in age.
He's much older than her in appearance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perhaps difference in religion.
Possibly.
Okay. Yes. So all those differences can contribute to seeing the world differently, having a different worldview. Could you please take the slide off? So for example, these glasses, let's say that this is French culture, and I'm going to see the world as a French woman. Ooh la la! But then I become an American, and I'm going to see the world through American worldview. Oh my God! They're cockeyed too. And what about you?
Well, I would say, e de vado fantastico.
Oh, and you're seeing the world as?
In Italian.
Okay. And as an American?
That's really cool.
So see, that is what we're saying, is that these lenses represent different ways of seeing the world. And so worldview can be anything. It can be your philosophy of life, your views of human existence, the purpose of life, your views about death, your prejudices, everything goes into worldview, and different cultures can formulate those differently. So could we please have the next slide, which is slide number 2? Okay, we're going to talk about universal, cultural, and personal. You see in the picture on the top left a woman eating a hamburger. Now, how does this represent the universal?
Well, everyone needs to eat to live.
Exactly. Everyone needs to eat. So these are universal necessities. And what would be another possible universal necessity?
Clothing.
Clothing. So everybody has to maintain their body temperature at 98.6.
Right.
And according to the climate they will culturally adapt their clothing. Now the second picture over to the right is representing the cultural. And I have a picture here of Moses and the burning bush.
Yes.
Now this is religion within culture, and it happens to be the Christian religion. Would this be something that Buddhists would have in their culture?
No, I don't believe so.
No, it wouldn't. They have a completely different belief system.
Right.
But what about Muslims?
Yes, it's part of their culture.
It's part of their
religion.
culture because it is an Abrahamic religion,
Yes.
and there are similarities between Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Now let's go to the personal. What do you see there in that picture?
I see a man with a lot of piercings on his face.
Okay, now do you think, how is this just a choice, a personal choice?
Well, I don't think there's any basic human need that he's meeting by having the piercings. You don't need them to eat, to survive, or to keep the body temperature at a certain level. So I think this is a personal choice. He just likes the way it looks.
Okay, personal choice. Could you take the slide off, please? Okay, and so thinking about personal choices, what are some of our personal choices? In my case, I do not carry a cell phone, even when I travel. And also, I choose to wear contact lenses rather than glasses.
Okay.
What about you? What's a personal choice?
Well, I do carry a cell phone. It's very difficult to communicate with people nowadays without one, but I would say probably just being clean cut and keeping my hair short and shaving. And the same goes with my dog. He's very well groomed. I could keep him as a long-haired dog, but I prefer to keep him clean cut.
I see. Okay, yes, and those are personal choices. Great. So that's universal, cultural, and personal. And we're going to focus on the cultural. So let us talk about a possible definition of culture. How would you, off the top of your head, define culture?
I'd say it's a series of customs and beliefs that people kind of are taught growing up, or that they experience and that they believe to be the normal way of looking at the world.
Okay, good. Could we have the next slide, please? Slide number 4. Slide number 4, please. Thank you. Okay, this is a basic definition of culture. There are many definitions of culture. The shared values of a group of people which result in characteristic behaviors. And I want to emphasize the word result. What does the word result bring to mind?
I would say a cause and effect.
A cause and effect relationship. And so here we have cause and effect relationship. In this definition, what would be the cause and what would be the effect?
Well, the cause would be the belief, the value actually.
Values and beliefs,
yes.
Yep. And the effects?
Would be how they manifest that value, their behaviors.
Absolutely, very good. Okay, could you please take the slide off? Okay, so we're talking about a causal relationship between values and beliefs and behaviors. So we're going to see a little bit more about values now.
Okay.
Could we have slide number 5, please? Okay, so values are what people of a culture think is right and good. Now, what might you call that? If you think of something as right and wrong.
Those are your beliefs. Morality.
Morality, what is right and wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Now let's go to normalcy. What is normal? In every culture, some things are considered to be normal. It's the accepted way of doing it. It's the expected way of doing things. For example, when you were growing up, when you were a child, were you allowed to eat mashed potatoes with your hands?
No, we would use a fork.
That's right. And in our culture, we use a fork. But I lived in Bangladesh where people eat with their hands. And some of them told me they thought the fork was barbaric.
Okay, I can see
like
that.
Spearing the meat with a fork, it's like a weapon. Okay, and next, desirable. What would be something desirable in American culture?
Getting noticed often and getting a lot of attention, and having people give you likes on your Facebook posts, things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, but in contrast, Japanese culture, there's a saying, the nail that sticks out should be hammered in. So the whole idea is more conformity, where in American culture it's all about individualism.
Right.
And of course, Andy Warhol said what?
Everyone's going to be famous for 15 minutes.
Everybody's going to be famous for 50 minutes. And finally, the valuable, of course, means what we hold dear, what we consider important, sacred, and valuable. Okay, very good. Could you take off that slide, please? And now we're going to talk about a metaphor for culture.
Okay.
Okay, what do you know about icebergs?
I try to avoid them when I'm in a boat.
Exactly. And have you ever seen an iceberg in real life?
No, I hope
You
I never
haven't.
do.
Okay, then we are going to see an iceberg on the next slide. Could we please have slide number 6? There's an iceberg,
Okay.
and what is the most noticeable thing about it to you?
Well, there's a small boat navigating around it, looks like, and they can see what's above the water. They can see the iceberg clearly, the part of it that's above the water. But what's beneath the surface, it looks like it's much larger, and they don't see that necessarily.
Okay, that's right. The proportions are quite different, and the visibility of what is above and below is different. How do you think this helps us understand culture?
Well, we can see things that we can observe, but there's a lot more going on below the surface. I guess that's how I would put it.
Yes. What is it that we can actually see in a culture? You travel to a foreign place. What is it you can observe?
Well, you can see people's behavior, their clothes, their actions.
Exactly. Could you take the slide off, please? Yeah, so what you can see in a culture is their behaviors and artifacts. Now, when I say artifact, I'm not talking in the archaeological sense of, going to an archaeological dig.
Right.
An artifact can be anything from an arrowhead to an appliance, to an Armani handbag.
Okay.
It's a thing.
Yeah,
You
or
know,
a car.
just like this globe is a thing.
Yeah.
So many things. So what we can observe are artifacts or things and behaviors.
Right.
Right. And behaviors can include gestures.
Right, yes.
Okay, so what do we call gestures in general and facial expressions?
Emotions? No, they're actions.
Body
Body language, exactly.
Body
That's what-
language.
yes.
So body language, you can read body language to a certain extent. And so all of these things are things that we can observe. Could we please have slide number 7? Okay, so this kind of simplifies it. What is below the waterline?
Values,
Okay.
behaviors, things that you can't see.
Not the
really.
behaviors.
Oh, value. I'm sorry. Values are below the waterline. Yes.
Values and beliefs.
Beliefs.
Right. Values and beliefs are invisible.
Right.
But the behaviors are observable. And of course, I should have put up above there as well the artifacts. Let's go next to slide number 8, please. Okay, we're going to do a sorting exercise here.
Okay.
If you look below, you see some letters, and I want you to sort those.
Okay.
Which ones go above the waterline as observable, and which ones go below the waterline as invisible? Let's start with A, religious beliefs.
Oh, they're definitely below the waterline because you don't necessarily know what somebody believes. You can't really see it.
Okay, so for example, let's say somebody believes in Christianity. That's below the waterline.
Right.
But what is a behavior you can observe?
If they hand crosses or if they're going to church.
Okay, or saying the rosary or any
Right.
of those things, right? So, so religious beliefs or beliefs in general are below the waterline. And letter B, music.
Music is observable. You can hear it. You can see the CDs, the records, or the iTunes that they have, so you can
Right.
know what they're listening to.
So observable meaning that you can perceive it with your 5 senses.
Right.
So yes, music goes above the waterline. How about C, concept of fairness?
I think that's invisible
Why?
because you don't necessarily know what one person considers fair and what another person might consider fair. It might be completely different.
Right, they have different concepts and you cannot see their concept.
Right.
You cannot read their minds.
Exactly.
It's conceptual, it's an idea, it's a belief. It's invisible below the waterline. Letter D, style of dress.
Oh, that's observable, of course.
Okay, style of dress, of course, is observable. I want to go back for a second to letter C, concept of fairness. We said we cannot see it. But for example, if somebody believed it was fair, that their belief was an eye for an eye, how would that manifest that? How would that manifest itself in behavior?
Well, they might believe in if somebody loses an eye that somebody else deserves to lose an eye. Was that?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
But I mean, what might they do then?
They might hurt someone.
Exactly. They're going to go out and hurt someone perhaps because that's their belief. So what they do is their behavior.
Their action,
And
yeah.
what they believe is the cause of that behavior. Now we're going to jump ahead to letter E, preferred foods, visible or invisible?
I'd say mostly observable. You see what they're eating if they are eating fast
you can
food
see,
or
you can taste, you can smell. It's accessible to the 5 senses. And finally, letter F, general worldview.
I think that's kind of invisible, but you can sense what their general view is to some extent by what they're watching on TV maybe or what they're saying, so you can hear.
Okay, but what you're doing is you're mixing 2 things.
Okay.
You're saying you can sense it by observation.
Right.
So this is very good that could you take the slide off, please? This is very good that you just made that connection between the visible and the invisible. You say you cannot know the worldview, but you can guess at it
Right.
by watching their behavior. You said by watching what they look at on television. So that again is showing the relationship between what is below the waterline and what is above the waterline. Okay, and now finally we want to go to our artifacts. We've each brought in an artifact. Would you like to show us your artifact first?
This is an ashtray from the Hotel Hassler in Rome, which is near the Spanish Steps. It's a tribute to the Villa Medici, which is a very well-known family that lived in Rome.
Okay, hold it up. Okay, and what about that inside?
This is the coat of arms, I believe, of the family, and I don't know which way to hold it to make. I think this is the correct way.
Oh, can you please tell us how you acquired that?
This is something my father brought home from one of his trips to Italy. I'm hoping he got it at the gift shop at the Hotel Hassler, but he may have just slipped it into his suitcase. It's not really known, you know?
Okay, well, very good. Well, I have an artifact to show too, and this one is really cute. This is a wooden toy from Russia. I bought it in Russia. And I like it very much because it's very simple. It's carved from wood. You can see all the carved marks, but it also moves. It has movable parts, but it's a little bit stuck these days. Now, if you can see that, let me hold it this way. The adult bear is basically whipping the baby bear.
I see that.
But where are they? They are in the Russian banya, which is a sauna. And what they do in the Russian banya is after they get nice and hot, they use birch boughs or birch branches to whip each other or to whip themselves in order to increase their circulation.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. And I went to a banya in Siberia, and there was a woman, she was whipping herself, not with birch branches, but with nettles.
What
She
are
had
nettles?
trouble. Nettles, they're these things that sting really bad, and she was doing it in order to increase her circulation.
Wow.
But nettles sting terribly, so I was
But it
pretty
works,
shocked.
probably.
Yes. So that kind of wraps it up for our first episode.
That was great. It was very informative, and I learned a lot just in this first
There's
show.
so much to culture. It's infinitely fascinating, and just it is infinite, really, an infinite topic. But I want to preview next. The next episode is going to be about time. And we're going to talk about the difference between social time and clock time. Now, we know, for example, you know the phrase time is money, right?
Yes.
Okay. What culture do you associate that with?
American culture.
Right. Okay. So the other day I was at, well, every time I go to the grocery store, I notice if I'm the only one in line, the cashier is going like this, trying to get me out of there so fast. And there's nobody behind me.
Yeah, she might be trained to do that, you think, or encouraged?
Time is money.
Yeah.
But I think, to me, I don't like that because I don't see why we can't be conversing. And you know, I was once fired from Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, really?
When I was young. I was fired because I was too nice to the customers.
Oh, that's terrible.
Time is money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are going to talk about time. And I would like to invite people to, there's the email address on the screen, which is lookingintocultures@gmail.com. Don't forget the S on the end, because we're not just talking about one culture, we're talking about all world cultures. If anybody would like to be a guest on our show, we would love it, especially if you have special insights into another culture, or if you are from another culture who have lived or worked in another culture. It would be wonderful. We really would love you to come on the show. And so we have a little bit of time left, Frank. Can you want to tell me some more stories or talk about anything else?
I noticed at the opening of the show you had, you're focusing on certain countries. Now, can you tell me a little bit about that, why you did that with your magnifying glass?
Right. I took the countries that I've worked in. And so there are 12 different countries all over the world, over the world. And so I just zoomed in on them with my magnifying glass. And it was a nice nostalgic thing for me to do. And I have so many wonderful memories. Then they're so different because every culture was so very, very different.
Do you have a favorite country that you taught in?
No, I do not have a favorite country.
And you taught English as a foreign language to students?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's really amazing.
Yeah, right. And
Probably
what about
not
your
easy to do.
travels yourself?
Well, I've traveled to Italy, and I, saw all of the main attractions in Rome and Tuscany, Florence, and then I've also been to France and seen the Notre Dame.
So primarily Europe. Have you been outside of Europe at all?
I was at the Mayan ruins in Mexico.
Oh, okay.
So I've done a little bit of traveling. I always want to do more, and you just kind of learn about different cultures and why people do things a different way, and it makes more sense of why they are different, but they're really not that much different than all of us. They just might have different customs and different ways of dressing,
Yeah.
but we're all pretty much alike, I think.
Well, well, in terms of universals, we are. I can't entirely agree with you. I think there's some very large differences, and that's why we need intercultural understanding.
Okay.
We need to understand those differences. The differences definitely do exist. I wanted to say one more thing. I forgot what it was. I don't know. Oh, yes. We were talking about the word culture and cultures. The word culture is really thrown around a lot these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. You hear things like cancel culture. What's another one? Woke culture.
Right, right.
Can you think of some more?
Counterculture?
Counterculture. Well, that's more associated with the late 60s and the 70s.
Okay, yeah.
But it's amazing that I looked through the newspaper, and I saw the word culture in a collocation with another word on every page.
Yeah.
Rape culture,
Right, yeah.
policing culture, corporate culture. So we're going to talk about those on some other show.
Interesting.
But right now we want to talk about the culture as a whole, and not these more specific and very focused and very specific, much less comprehensive uses of the word culture. Yeah. So
It's an exciting topic. It's very,
do you have any opinions about, for example, the term cancel culture? Do you have any idea where that comes from?
I think it is based on what was happening politically. Without getting into politics too much, but I think that immediately if somebody doesn't agree with you, that they're canceled, either the TV show is canceled, or they might say something offensive, and before looking into it, they're taken off the air, or the show is canceled. It's happened a lot over the last few years, but it's happened, I think, on both sides of the political spectrum. It's not just one, but it's become a very common term to kind of, anytime somebody just immediately is shut off, they say cancel culture.
I guess it kind of annoys me that it's just used so liberally. It's just sprinkled everywhere.
Yeah.
And I have a friend in Boston who has a PhD related to culture, and she just thinks it's all quite silly, all these collocations with culture. She thinks it's kind of like just media, kind of just getting attention,
That does happen a lot. I think it's maybe just the writing. They don't want to really look into the story too much, so they just put a label on it without really investigating it.
Yeah, right. Well, we have to end now. So thank you very much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time for the next episode about time of Looking into Cultures.